Is there any way to predict whether someone will become this type of monster?
On July 22nd, 1991, Milwaukee police apprehended a serial killer and found the remains of 11 victims. The case remains one of the most shocking and horrifying mass murders by a serial killer on record. And ever since that day, no one has forgotten his name.
Jeffrey Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960, in Milwaukee. His childhood seemed normal at first, but there were some strange signs early on. Jeffrey's parents, Lionel and Joyce Dahmer, had a tough time in their marriage, and this affected Jeffrey as he grew up. As a child, he was shy and withdrawn. He had this strange fascination with animals, often taking them apart and trying to preserve their parts. As he got older, Jeffrey's troubles increased. He started drinking heavily and got into trouble for exposing himself in public in 1978. After high school, he went to college but ended up dropping out. In 1979, he joined the Army, but his issues with alcohol led to his discharge in 1981. These early signs hinted at the troubled path ahead, but no one could have predicted the darkness that awaited Jeffrey Dahmer in his later years. The next chapters of his life would reveal a much darker side to this seemingly ordinary boy. We'll return to Jeffrey's story shortly, but let's take a moment to acquaint ourselves with the narrative of an innocent soul first. Stephen Hicks, born on May 18, 1960, loved adventure. He was from Chardon, Ohio, and decided to hitchhike for fun, wanting new experiences. Hicks was carefree, enjoying the freedom of the open road, hitching rides, and chasing his dreams. Little did he know that his journey would meet Jeffrey Dahmer. In the summer of 1978, Hicks ended up with Dahmer, maybe thinking they could be friends on the road. Underneath the veneer of a friendly offer, Dahmer harbored dark intentions. As they shared a drink, a sudden and violent act changed everything. With a single blow from a dumbbell, Dahmer ended Hicks' life, disassembled his body and placed them into garbage bags. Stephen Hicks was the first victim in a series of awful events, a symbol of innocent lives affected by the hidden darkness within Jeffrey Dahmer. In September 1987, after meeting Stephen Tuomi, Dahmer brought him to a hotel room. Sadly, Stephen never came out of that room alive. Dahmer later said he woke up the next morning and found Tuomi lifeless in bed beside him. He told the police that he originally planned to drug Tuomi, and he couldn't remember fatally beating him with his fists. Afterward, Dahmer put Tuomi's body in a suitcase and took it to his grandmother's basement. A week later, he cut up the body and threw it in the trash, keeping the head for an extra week. Eventually, he boiled it and crushed the brittle skull. In October 1987, Dahmer tricked 14-year-old James Dockstader into the basement of his grandmother's house, promising him $50 for posing nude. After drugging him, Dahmer strangled Dockstader and got rid of his body similar to what he did with Tuomi. In March 1988, Dahmer went to a gay bar in Milwaukee and met Richard Guerrero. Dahmer invited Guerrero to his grandmother's house, offering $50 to spend the night. After drugging Guerrero with sleeping pills, Dahmer strangled him and did disturbing things with the lifeless body. Unlike before, Dahmer dismembered Guerrero's body within 24 hours. Dahmer's habit of bringing men to his grandmother's house late at night had begun to irk her, prompting him to secure a one-bedroom apartment for his disturbing activities. In one such instance, he lured a 13-year-old, Kyson synthesome phone, back to his apartment. There, Dahmer drugged and molested the boy, but Synthesymphone managed to escape, taking his harrowing story to the police. This led to Dahmer's arrest, and he faced charges of second-degree sexual assault and enticing a child for immoral purposes. After spending only a week in jail, Dahmer was released on bail, a development that would later prove to be a tragic twist in the unfolding narrative of his crimes. In March 1989, Anthony Sears, an aspiring model, tragically fell victim to Dahmer after their meeting at a bar. Concerned about potential police scrutiny on his apartment, Dahmer brought Sears to his grandmother's basement, where he drugged and strangled him. Sears became the initial victim from whom Dahmer collected trophies, meticulously preserving both his head and genitals in a wooden box. For a period, Dahmer discreetly kept this unsettling box in his work locker, revealing the sinister nature of his actions. A couple of months later, Dahmer took the life of Raymond Smith, a 32-year-old prostitute whom he had offered $50 for sex. After drugging Smith at his apartment, Dahmer used his hands to strangle him before capturing suggestive Polaroid pictures of the lifeless body. In the confines of his bathroom, Dahmer dismembered the body, proceeding to boil the remains and dissolve them in a container of acid, except for Smith's skull. This grisly trophy was kept in a cabinet alongside the skull of Anthony Sears. When complaints about the foul odor emanating from his apartment arose, Dahmer explained to neighbors that his refrigerator was malfunctioning, and he was awaiting repairs. In June 1990, Dahmer took the life of Edward Warren Smith, a familiar acquaintance who had last been seen with Dahmer at a party. Dahmer used acid to break down Smith's skeleton, inadvertently destroying the skull when attempting to remove moisture by placing it in the oven. Regrettably, no remains were ever recovered. 3 months later, Dahmer claimed the lives of 2 more innocent individuals. The first was Ernest Marquez Miller, a dance student whom Dahmer encountered outside a bookstore. Dahmer expressed a particular attraction to Miller's physique. Miller met a tragic end as his carotid artery was severed, followed by dismemberment in the bathtub. Dahmer preserved his entire skeleton in the bottom drawer of a filing cabinet, while his heart, liver, biceps, and portions of his thighs were stored in the freezer for later consumption. The second victim during this period was David Courtney Thomas, whom Dahmer encountered near the Grand Avenue Mall. Thomas was enticed to Dahmer's apartment with the promise of money for posing nude. Despite deciding that Thomas wasn't my type after lacing his drink and rendering him unconscious, Dahmer went on to strangle him. Polaroid photos were taken during the gruesome dismemberment process. In February, Dahmer approached Curtis Straughter, a 17-year-old, at a bus stop, enticing him with money in exchange for explicit photographs. Dahmer persisted in his macabre routine with his 10th victim, involving monetary offers, drugging, strangulation, photographing, dismemberment, and the preservation of body parts for both cannibalistic acts and as macabre souvenirs. Following his apprehension, Dahmer explained that consuming his victims was an irresistible compulsion, a twisted means of feeling a connection with them. Last victims of him were Errol Lindsay, Tony Anthony Hughes, Connorake Synthesymphone, Matt Cleveland Turner, Jeremiah Benjamin Weinberger, Oliver Joseph Lacey, and Joseph Arthur Bredehoft. These were not just victims, their lives were brutally taken in the darkest, unimaginable ways. Due to YouTube's restrictions, we can't delve into explicit details. If you're eager to explore further, you can find the intricate details on the Wikipedia page of Jeffrey Dahmer. These are the stories that shivers down your spine. On July 22, 1991, Jeffrey Dahmer tricked 3 guys into going to his place. He offered one of them, Tracy Edwards, $100 to take pictures and hang out. But as soon as they entered, things got weird. The apartment smelled bad, there was acid around, and Dahmer tried to put handcuffs on Edwards. They ended up in the bedroom, where Edwards saw strange stuff on the walls, a movie playing, and a big drum with a bad smell. Dahmer pulled out a knife and said he wanted to take naked pictures and eat Edwards' heart. Scared, Edwards tried to talk his way out, promising to let Dahmer take pictures if he put the knife away. Dahmer got distracted, and that's when Edwards saw his chance. When Edwards said he needed to use the bathroom, he convinced Dahmer to go to the living room. As soon as Dahmer was off guard, Edwards punched him, ran out the front door, and escaped from the creepy situation. At 11:30 p.m. on July 22nd, Tracy Edwards flagged down two Milwaukee police officers, Robert Roth and Rolf Mueller. Edwards had a handcuff on his wrist, and he told the officers about a freak who put it on him, asking for their help to get it off. When the officers' keys didn't work, Edwards agreed to go with them to the apartment where he had spent the last 5 scary hours before escaping. Upon entering apartment 213, where Dahmer lived, Edwards revealed that Dahmer had also threatened him with a big knife in the bedroom. Dahmer admitted to putting the handcuffs on Edwards but didn't explain why. When Mueller went into the bedroom to find the key, he discovered a large knife under the bed and a drawer full of disturbing Polaroid pictures showing dismembered bodies. Mueller showed the pictures to Roth, confirming the horrifying reality. When Dahmer saw them holding his Polaroids, he resisted arrest, but the officers managed to cuff him and call for backup. Opening the refrigerator, Mueller found the freshly severed head of a male. Pinned on the floor, Dahmer muttered, "For what I did I should be dead." A thorough search of the apartment uncovered more gruesome details. In Dahmer's kitchen, 4 severed heads were found, and in his bedroom and closet, 7 skulls, some painted and bleached. The investigation also revealed collected blood drippings, 2 human hearts, and a piece of arm muscle in Dahmer's refrigerator. In the freezer, a complete torso and a bag of human organs were discovered, frozen to the ice at the bottom. Exploring further in apartment 213, investigators uncovered the remains of 2 entire skeletons, a pair of severed hands, 2 preserved penises, a mummified scalp, and in a large drum, 3 more dismembered torsos dissolving in acid. A total of 74 Polaroid pictures detailing Dahmer's gruesome acts were found. The chief medical examiner later described the scene at 924 North 25th Street as more like a museum. Starting in the early hours of July 23, 1991, Detective Patrick Kennedy questioned Dahmer about the murders he committed and the evidence found in his apartment. Dahmer openly confessed to killing 16 young men in Wisconsin since 1987, plus 1 additional victim, Stephen Hicks, in Ohio back in 1978. After moving to the Oxford apartments, Dahmer developed a disturbing ritual. He posed his victims' bodies in suggestive positions, often with their chests thrust out, before dismembering them. Dahmer also confessed to engaging in necrophilia, performing sexual acts with his victims' bodies. Shockingly, he admitted to consuming the hearts, liver, biceps, and parts of thighs from 3 victims, killed at the Oxford apartments. He kept the flesh and organs of other victims for future consumption. Dahmer chillingly described his process, where he would tenderize body parts before preparing meals with various condiments. When asked about his reasons for consuming his victims, Dahmer mentioned initial curiosity and an odd desire to make them a more permanent part of himself. On July 25, 1991, Dahmer faced 4 first-degree murder charges. Within a month, by August 22, he was hit with an additional 11 murder charges in Wisconsin. On September 14, Ohio investigators found bone fragments in the woods behind Dahmer's confessed first victim's address. They identified 2 molars and a vertebra, connecting them to Hicks through X-ray records. 3 days later, Dahmer was charged with Hicks's murder in Ohio. Interestingly, Dahmer wasn't charged for attempting to murder Edwards or for Tuomi's murder. The Milwaukee County District Attorney only pursued charges that could be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, and since Dahmer had no memory of the Tuomi murder, with no physical evidence available, he wasn't charged. In a preliminary hearing on January 13, 1992, Dahmer pleaded guilty but insane to 15 murder counts. Dahmer's trial kicked off on January 30, 1992, in Milwaukee, where he faced 15 counts of first-degree murder before Judge Lawrence Graham. During the trial, forensic psychiatrist Park Dietz took the stand for the prosecution on February 12. Dietz revealed that Dahmer strongly identified with the villains in movies like The Exorcist III and Return of the Jedi, especially with the power these characters held. Connecting these films to Dahmer's mindset and the crimes at the Oxford apartments, Dietz explained that Dahmer sometimes watched scenes from these movies before searching for a victim. Dietz diagnosed Dahmer with substance use disorder, paraphilia, and schizotypal personality disorder. On February 17th, Dahmer received his sentence, with life imprisonment plus 10 years for the first 2 counts and a mandatory life sentence plus 70 years for the remaining 13 counts. The death penalty wasn't on the table, as Wisconsin had abolished it in 1853. Following the sentencing, Dahmer's father Lionel and stepmother Shari were granted a 10-minute private meeting with him before he was transferred to the Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage to start his sentence. They exchanged hugs and well wishes before Dahmer was escorted away. 3 months later, Dahmer was extradited to Ohio to face charges for the murder of his first victim, Stephen Hicks. In a brief 45-minute hearing, Dahmer pleaded guilty again and received a 16th term of life imprisonment on May 1, 1992. On the morning of November 28, 1994, Dahmer left his cell for his assigned work detail, accompanied by 2 fellow inmates, Jesse Anderson and Christopher Scarver. The trio found themselves unsupervised in the prison gym showers for about 20 minutes. Around 8:10 a.m., Dahmer was discovered on the bathroom floor, suffering severe head wounds from a 20-inch metal bar. He had been brutally bludgeoned, with his head repeatedly struck against the wall during the assault. Though Dahmer was alive, he was rushed to a nearby hospital and pronounced dead an hour later. Anderson, also beaten with the same metal bar, succumbed to his injuries 2 days later. Scarver, serving a life sentence for a 1990 murder, revealed that he first attacked Dahmer with the metal bar while Dahmer was cleaning a staff locker room. He then targeted Anderson as he cleaned an inmate locker room. After assaulting both men, Scarver, in a seemingly delusional state, returned to his cell and informed a prison guard, stating, "God told me to do it. Jesse Anderson and Jeffrey Dahmer are dead." Upon hearing of Dahmer's death, his mother Joyce expressed anger towards the media, questioning if everyone was now satisfied that he had been bludgeoned to death. The families of Dahmer's victims had mixed reactions. Some celebrated the news, while others felt a renewed sense of pain. Catherine Lacey, the mother of victim Oliver Lacey, remarked, "The hurt is worse now, because he's not suffering like we are."
To me, it just looked like the hurt is worse now because he's not suffering like we are.